I spent my childhood getting poisoned by fossil fuel companies, but now I have a way to fight back. Hi, my name is Nayeli Kobo. I'm 17 years old, and this is where I grew up. It's also where I was poisoned. When I was 9, I developed serious health problems. I had asthma, nosebleeds, headaches, stomach pains, body spasms that got to the point where I couldn't walk. And it wasn't just me. My entire neighborhood became ill. No one knew what was going on until a toxicologist came to my community. We learned we had been breathing in poison for years from the oil wells in the area. The company would disguise the smells so we wouldn't know what was going on. They made the emissions smell like guava, cherries, citrus, even chocolate. We decided we weren't going to put up with them poisoning us any longer. So my neighborhood came together, and by getting our politicians to listen to us and apply pressure on the company, we did it. We shut down the plant and we made our voices heard.
Well, it's two kinds of power, money and people. We don't have the money, but we have the people, voters, and we are gonna make a change.
I can't vote yet, but you can. You can make a difference. Pledge to vote now at theyearsproject.com/vote, and I'll send you a reminder right before Election Day. Because when you vote, politicians are forced to listen.
We produced about a dozen similar videos, and the result of the campaign was a 2% increase in the climate voters who saw the videos. We expect to be back with an extended campaign, or a version of this particular campaign for 2020. I'll get back to young people and elections in a bit, but first I want to say something that strikes me at conferences like this where the spotlight is always on solutions. A few weeks ago, I interviewed David Wallace Wells, author of The Uninhabitable Earth. Has anybody read it? That's not nearly enough. There are lots of books about climate change, but I can't think of a more essential one than David's. It's not exactly an upbeat book. David looked at hundreds of scientific studies on climate. The book captures the essence of those studies, and because David is an elegant writer, it is powerful and indispensable. It really is. Definitely read it. David's book does address solutions, but he doesn't spare us the enormity, really the horror of what we're facing. Here's one point David makes that made a deep impression on me. Fully half of the greenhouse gas emissions that warm our planet were emitted after Al Gore wrote his first book on climate, after Exxon scientists knew all about what they were doing, and all of us should have known. Several months ago, I interviewed the co-author of a book on climate solutions. And when I mentioned David Wallace Wells, he said, "I hate David Wallace Wells. He's such a downer." I suspect there may even be people in this room, solutions-oriented people, who are tired of hearing the bad news about climate. But here's my advice. Get over it. Especially if you want to build a movement to confront the climate crisis. Every effective movement I've witnessed, from the fight against racism to activism against the lethal impact of nicotine, has made a point to educate the public about the evils it's fighting against, and the outrage they generate goes a long way toward fixing the problem. Let me tell you about a few things we're focusing on right now at the Years Project. We want to inject the stranded assets issue into the public debate on climate. Most of the public hasn't heard about stranded assets or even about carbon budgets, how much coal, oil, and gas we have left to burn without making life unbearable. And yet the big coal and oil companies have proven underground and undersea assets far in excess of what can be safely used. Making matters worse, they're looking for more every single day. We've not yet heard a mainstream debate on how to stop big coal and big oil from burning our world beyond recognition. In forthcoming debates, journalists should be asking candidates what they'll do to keep those stranded assets from being burned. Lots of things need to be done on climate, but we can't think of anything more important than electing a climate candidate in 2020. we've made a strategic decision at the Years Project to do everything we can to help mobilize young people toward that end. If you heard the pundits last night after the Mueller hearing, you heard them observe that Mueller's testimony brought impeachment momentum to a grinding halt. Well, maybe it did, maybe it did, and maybe it didn't, but there is at least one issue in our national life, the climate crisis, that has tremendous momentum, and that's particularly true and because of younger voters. In 2010, the Yale program on climate change communication that Sarah talked about found that young Americans between the ages of 18 and 35 were split on climate change. In fact, they were less concerned and less preoccupied than the older generation. Climate change was not considered an issue of great importance. Now, according to Yale, 73% of millennials believe climate change is personally important to them. 40% say it will be an important factor in how they vote in 2020. In the Republican Party, younger voters are leading the charge. Whatever charge there is, they're leading it. Nearly 60% of millennial Republicans now believe that climate change is having an effect on the United States, and nearly half of millennial Republicans believe we need to do more about climate change, compared to 29% of older Republicans. And nearly half say they are already seeing the effects of climate change where they live. In every single category, millennial Republicans are more serious about climate change than their older counterparts. Of course, the most interesting question is whether constituent sentiment in the party is enough to overcome the financial influence of the fossil fuel moguls who support the GOP. So far, the answer is no, it doesn't. It is a shocking fact that here we are in 2019, and only one party has even a minimal commitment to save the human race from climate change. Here's the other thing. All over the world, youth climate movements have been spreading up at an unprecedented rate. You all know about the Sunrise Movement. In the US, the youth-led Sunrise Movement went from 15 locations to 250 across the country in only 6 months. They've led sit-ins, made national news multiple times, and get this, they persuaded 16 of the 23 presidential candidates on the Democratic side to endorse the Green New Deal. And then, of course, there's Greta Thunberg. At age 15, she began skipping school to protest the Swedish government's inaction on climate change. She's inspired tens of thousands to skip school and protest as well. She spoke at the UN, inspired politicians, and even became the greatest threat to OPEC. She can retire after that one. Greta inspired a movement. Youth-led climate strikes have occurred in over 100 countries, with tens of thousands of students walking out, often simultaneously with immense planning done all by kids working with each other online. So what else can we do? At the moment, we're working with a concert management group to stage a massive concert for climate 6 weeks before the November 2020 election. It'll be like a Live Aid or Tibetan Freedom concert on climate. We're looking to get the biggest musical groups on the planet to come and perform. For the sake of my 14-year-old, we're going to try and get Billie Eilish as well as Paul McCartney. I'm learning. We're not there yet, but I'm hopeful it will happen. It's another way to keep the spotlight trained on this most important of challenges and to get young voters to the polls. So back for a moment to the most encouraging sign of progress, the engagement of millennials and Gen Z on climate. For the second season of Years of Living Dangerously, our documentary series, Jack Black went to Miami. After hearing that Miami probably won't be there by the end of the century, he met someone who gave him and should give the rest of us some hope. And here's that excerpt.
Nice to meet you. I'm Jack. Is it true? I've heard that you are an incredible new force in the fight against climate change.
Definitely, yes. I go around and I educate as many people as possible, but my main focus is kids, because it's our generation that is gonna inherit this problem. Like, all the kids that I talk to, they're like, yes, this is a problem and we need to fix it. And they get so engaged and they're like, I want help. How can I help? What can we do?
That's so encouraging.
Yeah, it's really cool.
So it seems like that's the trend with the youth movement.
Yeah.
More and more people accepting
Kids
what's
get it.
happening.
Unlike so many adults in leadership positions, our governor has denied that climate change is real, and our senator denies that climate change is at all related to humans, that we have not caused this. And these are educated people. I like to say that I live in a state of denial, but not me personally, the entire state of Florida.
Wow. I mean, it's a world problem, right? It's not just a Miami problem.
No. Miami is #1 in terms of vulnerability. So what we see here is going to get the whole world to wake up.
For the survival of the species, of human beings,
Or
right?
will we become water world
Exactly. Where it's just me and Kevin Costner.
on a little boat?
Well, he was kind of like an Aquaman. He didn't need a boat. Anyway, it's an amazing movie if you get a chance. Thank you so much for this. This is really the highlight of my journey.
Yes.
Finally, I found some hope. But it's been amazing talking to you. Do you have any events coming up?
Yes, actually. Part of a program called Breakthrough Miami. I'm gonna give a talk to about 100 kids.
I'm Delaney, and I'm going to talk to you guys about my passion, which is global warming and sea level rise.
The good news is there are things that we can do. Instead of using fossil fuels, we have technology like wind power and hydropower and electric cars and solar power. We just need to use it. What about global warming? If we work together, we can do this.
What do we want? Climate justice! When do we want it? What do we want? Climate justice! Now! We are unstoppable! Another world is possible! 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 We are unstoppable!
So there is stuff to feel hopeful about, even without avoiding what is scary about climate. If any of you want a link to both series of Years of Living Dangerously, you've made the effort to come to Ketchum, Idaho. We'd be glad to send you both years of it. Thanks very much. The sign-up sheet is in the lobby.